It was a crowded subway car in Manhattan. A homeless man screaming threats had passengers frozen in fear. A former Marine stood up to protect them, and minutes later, the man lay unconscious and a national firestorm was ignited. Let's talk about it. You've reached the Tentacles of Cuyahoga County. I'm your host, the infamous ex-chief. This is episode 38 and the week of December 9th, and we're getting into this Daniel Penney case. But before we do, if you have anything that you want to contribute, yell at me, tell me what a great or what a horrible job I'm doing, feel free to leave a comment or email me at thetentaclesofcuyahogacounty@gmail.com. The Tentacles of Cuyahoga County @gmail.com. You can also send me a secured signal message. I'll put it right here. Everything is inverted on my camera here. I'll put the signal QR code right here, and as always, down below in the description of the video, I will have one link that I have been able to find, one link that gives all contact information you could possibly ever want. Just head into the description and hit the link. Let's get into this Daniel Penney case. So right before, I just wanted to get a full capture because I didn't want to get any too much blowback here on my shirt here. Happy Treason Day, ungrateful colonials. It's actually supposed to be a July 4th reference, but I like the shirt and it's too awesome not to wear. So today, we're diving into the case of Daniel Penney. Was he a good Samaritan, punished for doing the right thing? Or was he a reckless individual who went too far? But this isn't just about one man. It's about a legal system that is becoming too quick to overcharge, too blind to evidence, and too willing to bend to the court of public opinion. Stick with me, Tentacle Nation, as we uncover the truth, expose the overreach, and show you why cases like these threaten the very foundation of justice. Hopefully you're having a good week, Tentacle Nation. I'm Scott, better known to many of you as the infamous ex-chief. And tonight on the Tentacles of Cuyahoga County, we're taking a hard look at how prosecutors across the country are overstepping their bounds and how it's costing us all. Now, if you've been following this channel, you know I'm usually here talking about good police officers being treated unfairly by the justice system, not talking about the bad ones, a lot of good ones. But tonight, we're flipping the script. This case shows how prosecutorial overreach doesn't just target those in uniform. It could easily target you, me, or anyone trying to do the right thing in a chaotic moment. The Daniel Penney case isn't just an isolated incident. It's a prime example of how ordinary people acting with good intentions can find themselves in the crosshairs of a legal system more focused on politics than on justice. Let's start by breaking down what happened on the subway and how we got here. To convict someone of second-degree manslaughter, the prosecution must prove that the defendant acted recklessly, that they consciously disregarded a substantial and unjustifiable risk to human life. But in Penney's case, the evidence doesn't align with the charges. Witnesses described Neely as threatening. The situation is chaotic, and Penney's actions as protective, not malicious. Now, let's add some perspective by comparing this case to a similar situation from Canton, Ohio. In 2023, Frank Tyson, a black man in Canton, Ohio, died after being restrained by two police officers during a chaotic arrest. Tyson repeatedly said, "I can't breathe," before becoming unresponsive. Prosecutors charged the officers with reckless homicide. But here's the problem. The officers, like Penney, were responding to a volatile situation, doing what they thought was necessary. Were their actions reckless? Or was this a tragic outcome in a high-pressure situation? Let's take a closer look. So I made my handy side-by-side chart here. And as you can see, both cases involve tragic deaths following restraint methods. But in neither case do the facts suggest recklessness. The Canton officers and Daniel Penney were responding to high-stress situations where split-second decisions had to be made. This raises an important question. Why are prosecutors so quick to pursue charges that don't align with the evidence? This isn't justice, folks. It's overreach, and it's happening more often than you might think.
Jury in the New York City subway chokehold case is now considering a lesser charge against the suspect. Today, the judge in the case dismissed the manslaughter charge against Marine veteran Daniel Penney after the jury remained deadlocked. The jurors will now deliberate a second charge of criminally negligent homicide for the death of Jordan Neely. This charge carries a punishment of up to 4 years in prison instead of 15. Neely died on a subway train after Penney placed him in a chokehold for almost 6 minutes. Penney's lawyers say he was protecting himself and other passengers. And developing now today.
So, as I talk about and describe everything that he's going through, I want you to reflect it back to yourself, because when I talk about all of the prosecutions going on for the East Cleveland officers, this is exactly the same thing that they're going through. And here we have a situation where this is going on with a normal citizen, just like you. Me, anyone could be in this situation. When prosecutors overreach, the consequences are devastating. Not just for the defendants, but for the public trust in the justice system. Let's talk about what this has meant for Daniel Penney. Since his indictment, Penney has faced enormous legal and financial pressure. Fighting charges like second-degree manslaughter is costly. And even though the charge has been dismissed, Penney's life will never be the same. And he's not alone. Across the country, overreach like this is eroding public trust in the system. According to recent polls, only 30% of Americans have confidence in the justice system. Cases like Penney's and Tyson's contribute to that erosion. People start asking, is this about justice or politics? These are the stakes. Overreach doesn't just hurt us individuals. It hurts all of us by undermining the credibility of the system. Now, let's turn to the people behind these decisions. Prosecutors like Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. And I think it's interesting because that's actually usually how you can always find the quickest way that a movie or a story is incorrect. Different parts of the country refer to prosecutors as different. New York refers to them as DAs. Ohio, we refer to them as just prosecutors. I do appreciate watching recreation of crime stories that occur in Ohio, and they're referring to the prosecution as district attorneys. It's the quickest way you can see that they need to hire some people behind the scenes to help them out with these things. But let's get back.
Facing criticism and calls for his resignation, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg changes course.
CBS 2 political reporter Marsha Kramer says Bragg is telling his staff that his earlier memo on crime was confusing.
Was it attending the funeral of hero cop Jason Rivera where his widow called him out?
We are not safe anymore. I know you were tired of these laws, especially the ones from the new DA. I hope he's watching you speak through me right now.
In the Penney case, Bragg's office pursued charges that were clearly unwarranted. And this isn't the first time his judgment has been called into question. Bragg's office has been criticized for its handling of several high-profile cases. Critics argue that his focus on political messaging often leads to overcharging or inconsistent decisions. Accountability matters, folks. When prosecutors overreach, there should be consequences. And it's not just about one DA. It's a systemic issue. These are the same things that are coming out in Cuyahoga County right now with the East Cleveland prosecution's complete overreach, and there's no penalty to the prosecutors for doing it. There's no penalty if a prosecutor wanted to indict you today. Think of the mental anguish, the public scrutiny that you would go through from Channel 19 getting on there talking about you, the money that you would have to come up with for an attorney, and I don't know why these little things come up all of a sudden. That's awesome. The money that you have to fork over for any type of legal defense, just to have a mediocre attorney, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars. This is the problem with the system. And you can go with a public defender. You might as well just plea right now. It doesn't cost the prosecutors any money to do this. It didn't cost them anything to do it with Penney. It didn't cost them anything to do it with the East Cleveland officers. It didn't cost them any money to do it with the Canton officers. They're able to still collect their check, go through their normal life and daily routines, and there's never any negative part about it. They get to go on with their life after they falsely have accused people. I don't know if anybody in Ohio here has been following the qualified immunity efforts that are going through right now to put it on the ballot to end qualified immunity. And while I'm hesitant to jump on board because I think law enforcement in certain cases needs it, I know I'll get a lot of grief out of that. Good cops need it. But perhaps you could say the same thing with prosecutions, but prosecutors and judges seem to be on a completely different level. You have to prove something much higher in standard in order to get the qualified immunity taken from them. And again, they're able to do it arbitrarily without consequence. There's no oversight or overview other than being elected for them making these decisions, making these bad choices. And of course, the elected official like Mike O'Malley in Cuyahoga County, whatever his underlings do, he can just kick him out and fry him to the media and say, I wasn't aware of this. It's absurd. We're going to come back for the last segment, folks. We've talked about the legal definitions, the impact on individuals like Daniel Penney, and the broader implications of prosecutorial overreach. But the question remains, what can we do to stop this from happening again? And how do we rebuild the trust in a system that feels increasingly broken? For every case like Daniel Penney's, there are countless others where overreach has upended lives. But some of these stories also offer hope. Let me share a few examples. Take the case of John Kinzel, a Louisiana man wrongfully convicted of a crime based on inconsistent testimony. Prosecutors pushed for a life sentence despite glaring holes in the evidence. After nearly 26 years behind bars, Kinzel was finally released when his conviction was overturned. Stories like Kinzel's show how damaging overreach can be. But they also demonstrate the power of persistence and public pressure in correcting these wrongs. Now, think about Daniel Penney. While his case isn't about a wrongful conviction yet, it shows how the mere act of overcharging can permanently alter someone's life. Penney's fight could last for years, and not everyone has the resources or public support to persevere. According to the National Registry of Exonerations, over 3,300, that's 3,300 people, have been exonerated in the U.S. since 1989, collectively losing more than 29,000 years. That's staggering. 29,000 years of wrongful imprisonment. And many of these cases began with the prosecutors pushing charges that didn't match the facts. Now, I'm desperately trying to stay on the Penney topic here, all right? But it just brings into the whole East Cleveland thing because, there's so much intricacy to each of the East Cleveland cases. You have the overcharging. You have the bad motions, the motions that are unconstitutional. You have judges that are violating known constitutional laws, such as Garrity, such as the fact of being able to, that police officers should be judged not by hindsight, but by what another reasonable officer should do. Those things have just been taken completely out, and it's mind-boggling in Cuyahoga County. I'm trying to stay focused on the Penney incident here. So how do we fix it? It starts with reforming how prosecutors operate and ensuring they are held accountable for their decisions. Let's break it down. Independent oversight. Establish boards to review cases of alleged prosecutorial misconduct and hold prosecutors accountable. Charge review panels. This is critical. This is so critical, folks. Require independent panels to review charges before they're filed in high-profile or complex cases. Why is this even a thing that we are needing to talk about? This should be in place right now. Data transparency. And this is something that I know a lot of attorneys, one in particular that I know pretty well, argue for all the time. Mandate that prosecutors release data on charging decisions, conviction rates, and case outcomes. Public involvement. Engage communities to participate in prosecutors' elections and oversight boards. These reforms won't fix everything overnight, but they're a start. And accountability begins with transparency. When prosecutors know their decisions are being scrutinized, they're more likely to act fairly and proportionately. But reform isn't just up to lawmakers or oversight boards. It's up to us. Prosecutors like Alvin Bragg are elected officials, which means you, the voters, hold the power to demand change. Voter turnout for elections involving prosecutors varies widely, but it's often much lower than turnout for presidential or gubernatorial races. In Ohio, for example, overall voter turnout for general elections ranged from approximately 49% in 2023 to 72% in 2024. However, turnout for local races, including those for prosecutors, is often significantly lower. Nationally, participation in prosecutor elections can be as low as 20% in some areas. People are deciding who holds one of the most powerful positions in the justice system. Imagine if more people paid attention to their local prosecutors, researched their records, and demanded accountability. Imagine if communities rallied behind reform candidates who promise to fix broken systems. Change starts locally. There are organizations fighting for reform every day. Groups like the Innocence Project and Fair and Just Prosecution are working to expose misconduct and push for better policies. Supporting them is one way that you can make a difference. Tentacle Nation, our final segment for this episode. And while we were recording, there was actually a pretty significant update occurring in the Daniel Penney case. And I saw some newsreels relative to his defense attorneys taking him out at the some sort of district and having some cocktails. Seemed like he was in pretty decent spirits, which is quite unbelievable for the traumatic events that he had to go through to get where he was.
What's up? Hi, Daniel. What's up? How you feeling?
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
He's feeling good. He's feeling good. He's feeling good.
What's up?
We're
Come together.
Yeah.
How's it going? How's it feel?
Feels great. He's finally got the justice he's deserved.
Did you think it was going to happen?
Sorry? No, we think that this should have happened probably on day one, but the point thing is it happened. So we can't control the timing of it, but we can certainly savor the outcome.
And why do you think it was not guilty?
That's
Instead
That's that guy.
Well, he's not guilty on a few different reasons. Because his actions were justified. He was trying to help people on that train, and he did. And number two, he's not responsible for the death because the death was caused by a lot of other factors that we tried to present with a lot of clarity, such as the K2 abuse and the sickling crisis, and cardiac issues. Not to mention the paranoid schizophrenia, which only added to that impact. So I'm just glad that the jury was able to truly evaluate that as a potential cause of death, and that Danny was justified in the actions that he took.
So let's talk about this a little more here. What the updates came through. So, I mean, against all odds, a Manhattan jury has delivered a surprising verdict that Daniel Penney has been acquitted of criminally negligent homicide. And if you recall, the manslaughter charge was dismissed after a deadlock. So for some reason, this verdict represents hope, at least to me, that justice can still prevail. But for Penney, it's a bittersweet victory. So we'll explore what this means for the justice system, what it cost Penney to get here, and why this case is far from just another courtroom drama. So let's start with the verdict. Daniel Penney has been acquitted all the way around. The manslaughter charge, which, if you recall, was already dismissed by Judge Maxwell Wiley, and that was never going to stick. But the acquittal of the criminally negligent homicide charge, that was a complete surprise. Even to the seasoned legal beagles, that was a surprise. So, why is it surprising? I'm glad you asked. Because Penney's case was prosecuted in one of the most politically charged climates we've seen in recent years. The district attorney's office, if you remember the guy I've been talking about here, Alvin Bragg, pushed hard to convict Penney despite questionable evidence, and that's stating it in the highest regard that you possibly can for Alvin Bragg. Questionable evidence, because there was no evidence. Many thought the jury might convict on the lesser charge simply to avoid backlash. Instead, they acquitted him outright, and that's a huge feat, folks. Of all the pressure you got to think of the jury, you have BLM representatives out there speaking on a daily basis, and again, this is not a case. I'm not denying that there is not racial motivated things that occur in the world today. I'm not naive. I'm not denying that. But you can't compare this. This has nothing to do with race. This incident has nothing to do with race. So for BLM to be out there and broadcasting their message relative to this incident is insane to me.
There was no way you could put 9 white people in a room that would find Daniel Penney guilty. They picked a white supremacist jury specialist to target the racists in that jury. The prosecution pointed out the fact that defense was eliminating people based on race. Let me take it back because I don't want to scare y'all. Logically thinking, if you pick a white supremacist jury specialist and you pack the jury with white people, obviously you think race has a significant role in this case, and obviously you were looking for that one white supremacist holdout. That one holdout. Might have been more, but there was definitely one person in there that said, I'm not going to convict this white kid for killing that poor little mentally ill Negro piece of trash.
So, but despite that, the jury had no idea what was going to happen to the city, and despite that, they chose to acquit him. This verdict sends a powerful message. A jury of ordinary citizens can look past political pressure and focus on facts. It's a glimmer of hope for those of us, me, who have questioned the fairness of this process from the beginning. So let's talk about this victory, what it cost Daniel Penney. An acquittal doesn't erase the emotional, the financial, and the reputational damage that he's already endured. Penney's defense likely cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he did receive a lot of crowdfunding efforts that helped, but no amount of money can compensate for the 2 years of uncertainty and stress that he's endured. Emotionally, he's been through the ringer. Branded as a vigilante, he faced public protest and was vilified in certain media circles. Imagine trying to live the rest of your life with that cloud over your head. Even though he's been acquitted, the damage to his reputation will linger. And this is a man who stepped up in a chaotic moment to protect others, only to be prosecuted as if he were the aggressor. The question is, how many people now will hesitate to act in a crisis because they fear being put through the same ordeal? So, what does this verdict mean for the justice system? So, on one hand, it's a reminder that juries can deliver fair verdicts, even in politically charged cases. And on the other hand, it raises questions about why this case went to trial in the first place. Let's be clear, this case should have never gone this far. Alvin Bragg's office pursued charges that didn't even align with evidence, and the jury saw through it. But how many people in Daniel Penney's position would have had the resources or public support to fight back? This case also exposes the deep flaws in a system where prosecutors wield immense power with little accountability. Penney's acquittal is a win for justice, but it's also a reminder of how easily this could have gone the other way. So I brought this up in the previous segment, but I wanted to wrap up because I wanted to make certain that we really focus on this. So let's talk about where we go from here. This verdict is a step in the right direction, but the larger issues of prosecutorial overreach and public trust remain. As I talked about before, number one, independent oversight. Create independent review boards to evaluate high-profile prosecutions. Number two, public awareness. Educate voters about the power of prosecutors and the importance of local elections. Number three, support for the accused. Expand resources. Expand the resources for defendants to ensure fair trials, regardless of their financial status. Cases like Penney should make us ask hard questions about accountability. Why are prosecutors so rarely held responsible for pursuing weak cases? I say it again. Why are prosecutors so rarely held responsible for pursuing weak cases? How do we protect individuals from being unfairly targeted? Most importantly, we need to ensure that cases like this don't deter people from stepping up in moments of crisis. If good Samaritans fear prosecution, we risk becoming a society where no one acts when it matters most. Remember, the prosecutor is the most powerful position in the county. If you want change, it starts at the ballot box. Tentacle Nation, Daniel Penney's acquittal is a beacon of hope, but it's also a sobering reminder of how much work remains. Penney walked away from this ordeal with his freedom, but at what cost? His case should make us all think about the justice system's priorities and what we can do to fix them. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Stay informed, stay engaged, and let's keep fighting for justice that's fair and impartial. This is the infamous ex-chief signing off.